In this video, we're going to look at the distribution part rather than the generation part of the analysis. The generation was here. We looked at things like the levelized cost of electricity. We looked at the IRRs. And from a financial standpoint, we looked at the heat rates, the availability factors, and so forth. In the distribution case, we're going to look at return on investment and return on equity and compare that to the tariffs. And look at things like what happens if we change the losses and change the sales. Now, this is more of a corporate analysis than a project finance analysis. We don't have really much history here, but you can see that there are different, certainly different criteria, different financial criteria, different operating assumptions. Now we're going to fix this graph, and on this graph we looked, and we can take any single variable in the whole sheet and just graph it. But we better put the scale, we better put the names of the variable on the scales. We better put the units on the scales. And on this one, this has got really the key drivers, which are how much energy received. But I didn't put really the most important one, maybe, which is what happens to the real cost of electricity. So if you look at our distribution model, we start with the assumptions and the value drivers. The very first one is the tariff, and then we see how much the investment cost is. Then we put and in this we put the loss factors, all the different types of losses that we can have, and then we put in all the operating costs. These again come from the, if they're blue, they come from the multi-year tariff option file. We put some valuation assumptions in, and then we work through the energy sales, multiply that by a tariff to get to put a applied tariff, and we get the revenues that we collect, subtract the costs, put the capital expenditures in, compute the depreciation expense, get our free cash flow, and once we have the free cash flow, we get the earnings and the cash flow statement and the balance sheet, and finally we get some financial ratios, and we'll compute. I think what's so important here is to see what the cost of the total cost of electricity to consumers per megawatt hour, and then we can put the cost in megawatt hours, and then we can also, why don't we also put the real, let's put the inflation index, and then let's put the total cost to total real cost to consumers. So let's look at what the total cost is. We really eventually want to compare what the return on equity is to the total cost. Now, why the reason we don't have any difference is, again, there's no debt in this model yet, which there will be in the next video. Okay, and we also, I think we should also show what the total real cost to consumers per megawatt hour, and let's also compare that to the total real, let's put the price per megawatt hour of distribution, and compare, and then compute the real price of distribution per megawatt hour. So we can really compare the real price of distribution to the total price of electricity. The dangerous thing, I think, for a distribution company is that the cost of generation really increases, which means the total cost to consumers increase. At the same time, you're trying to reduce non-technical losses. Now, we had started. Now, one of the things I'm going to do is to put the oh, I've got a phone call. Now I'm going to have to ruin my train of thought. Okay. Now, I'm also going to show you how to make a scenario analysis, because we just had a one single assumption for the distribution tariff. So here, let's put this. Let's start with the nominal tariff per the MISO. Okay, and just copy this to the here. Now let's make another scenario. Let's put constant real tariff from, why don't we start with 2014 was pretty low. Let's put, okay, let's put from 2001. Let's make two of them. We'll start from 2013, and let's put constant real tariff from 2014, and then we'll put constant real tariff with, how about from 2014 with productivity factor. This is, if there is this alternative regulation with where we put a flat tariff and allow the company to earn profits if they can lower expenses, so you're not changing the tariff all the time. And then I'm putting our code number here. Okay, and this what did we do over here? Well, let's put 1, 2, 3, 4. That's those are our scenario numbers. So we have one. Is that okay? We have about 4 scenario numbers. Okay, and let's make the first one. We're going to start here, and then we're just going to increase this by 1 plus the inflation rate. Okay, and then with this one we're going to do the same thing, but we're going to just increase it from the next thing. Okay, and then we're going to why don't we take this one and put a productivity factor in, and let's say our productivity factor is 2% per year. So we take this number and multiply by 1 plus the inflation rate times 1 minus the productivity factor. Okay, and then we have our scenarios. Now, to make these scenarios work, we use the index function, if you remember. The index function, and we shade the area just above, and then press F4 on the scenario number. Okay, now this scenario eventually is going to come from our scenario case. We're going to make another scenario for the tariff. Okay, I think we got too wide things. Let's items that have code numbers we're going to make a scenario analysis for, and we're going to try to analyze the scenarios. Now the other thing we can let's make one more thing. So let's put an index. Oops. And so now if we change this to 2, we have the constant real tariff, 3, 4, and so forth. Okay, and I think for presentation now, we really should have, let's evaluate what happens to these kind of things. So our distribution revenues come from the revenues collected. Okay. For the distribution revenues, what is that? How do I get rid of this thing? Oh, there it goes. For the distribution revenues, we should have this thing takes our this one, and okay, so if we would change the scenario number, then I hope, let's look at this one, 6863. We have the 6863 here. Okay, and then that gets multiplied by the sales to the ultimate consumers to give us our revenues. Okay, so we have our distribution revenues. Then let's take the total, not the total energy that we collect on, but the total energy we have to buy that includes all the losses. So I hope up here we have the energy received. That's the energy purchased, and we have the various losses. I think we can do it here. So this is the difference between the energy we have to buy and the energy we lose. Okay, and then we have the cost, and I hope we have the cost of wholesale power in nominal naira. And here's the cost of the power. So the total cost of wholesale power per megawatt hour is, which it's almost really not necessary to do this. So, and obviously I did something wrong, so maybe it was. This is in millions of naira. Oops. Okay, and total energy purchased is in megawatt hours. This is in naira per megawatt hour. And so this divided by this. Oh, just a second. This came, I'm sorry, total cost of, this is total cost, not per megawatt hour, total cost of power. So let's multiply those things together. And I think we have to divide by 1,000. That's our distribution revenue. So you can see that our wholesale power, I should be putting it here. This is really bad. Excuse me for doing this. Okay. Okay, and then we have the total collected from consumers is the sum of these two, and the total energy sales in megawatt hours is up here. This is the amount we actually sell to consumers, not the amount you buy for the electricity. And so our total cost to electricity to the consumers is this, and we better multiply that by 1,000. So this is in Naira per megawatt hour. And then we have our exchange rate up at the top. I think it was a good idea to put these kind of general parameters. This is how many Naira per US dollar. And so our cost in US dollars for the total rate is about 118, which is about 11.8 cents. Okay, and then we can put our inflation index in, and then the total cost in real terms we can deflate, and I guess this will be really the cost in 2011. Perhaps we should keep this flat until 2013, but we can put the price of distribution. So this is the distribution divided by the total energy sales, again, times 1,000. Okay, and so our real price is this divided by this. And I think we put, why don't we put the with starting level. Let's start in 2014. So this will really be the real cost as of 2014. So we'll put a 1, just multiply this times 1 plus the inflation rate times this number has to be greater than or equal to that. That's like putting a true and false right into our analysis. And now we have all this shift control, right arrow, control R. And now let's put some of these in our graph. Okay, now we made a graph where we put an index here, and let's insert some lines. So why don't we, here's the kind of things I think you might want to see is let's put the I think we should put the cost of wholesale power in Naira per megawatt hours, and then I think we should put the total cost of the electricity here in Naira per megawatt hours, and then I think we should also put in the why don't we put in this is the total cost of electricity. Okay, and then we can put the total cost to consumers, and then we can finally put the Total real cost to consumers. I hope we have the real distribution cost. And I think we should make one more for the we should put the real price of production, of generation. You know, why don't we put the price of generation per MWH sold? So this would be the total cost of the wholesale power divided by the sales multiplied by 1,000. Okay, and then we can put the real price of generation per megawatt hour sold. Okay, and that's going to be in, these are all in, oops, Naira per megawatt hour. Okay, and that's just this divided by our inflation index. Okay, so now why don't we also put the, let's put the real price of generation per megawatt hour sold. So total cost in US dollars here, total real cost per megawatt hour excuse me, I have to put the oops, okay, whoops. And finally the total real cost of generation, distribution per megawatt hour, and the total real price of generation per megawatt hour sold. Now after we do this, I think I can just copy this. That's why I was a little bit careful to take the things out there. Okay, I don't know, I think that's okay that we have all of this, and then the graph is over here. Now if we make the graph, I think right now, because I cheated, we can just do this. So all this graph was index of this up to here. So we just use the same sort of index function, and then if we want to make the graph, I'll press alternate F1. That will give us our graph. Now I think the one thing we should really change, which size would you like? That one? Okay. Why don't we make the okay. Why don't we change the graph? Okay, I think that the one thing that would be nice in the graph is to also, we could put this, if we put this in the title, it would say it here. But let's say if we, let's copy this to here. Whoops, no. Of course we copy this to here. Okay, so this gives us the units, and now let's see if we can't put them up here. So let's just select the chart area. I wonder if there's an automatic way to do this. There probably is. Let's edit this, and oh, excuse me, that's not what we want to do. We want to excuse me. Okay, to make the graph, I was wrong. Just put before, what we should have done is go to the design, now the layout. We should have looked at the axis titles. We should have gone to the vertical title and put an equal sign. Just as soon as you click on that, put an equal sign. Press that, and then we have our different graphs. Okay, this is a little bit wide. Why don't we make this a little smaller? Okay, and why don't we cut this and then put this over into our summary page, so we have a little bit of a better graph. Okay. Okay, so let's just look at kind of what's happening in the various different scenarios. The total cost of wholesale power is going up. Total cost to electricity consumers is going up. Total, but in US dollars it's so much. The real cost to consumers is going down. The real distribution rates, in this case we must have had a constant assumption. The real price of generation is actually going down. Interesting. The real tariff is going, the MITO tariff is flat. That's actually not the MITO tariff, but in fact, let's fix that. This should be this should have been what we assumed, and this should have been in Naira per megawatt hours. So that's a little bit of how we can make a scenario analysis. Oh, one more thing. What I did over here, these are inputs. If we put number 2 or number 3, it gives a conditional formatting. If we want to do the same sort of thing, we shade the area, okay, and then go to conditional formatting, make a new rule, and this time we'll use a formula to determine how to format this. And when the code number, let's press the F4 on that code number. Whoops, excuse me, it already pressed the F4. When that equals this number, but on this number, let's press the F4. We want to keep the column constant, but allow the rows to change. And then we can format this. It looks like I formatted it with a fill color of yellow, something like that. Okay, and then so if we put in number 1, it goes to number 1, and 3, number 3, and so forth. Okay, so that's the last thing. And goodbye. That's enough of this video.